Welcome back to The Critique. Today we are wrestling with a truly magnificent beast of an intellectual project, the Chronically Online algorithm.
Mm.
This is an incredibly dense, really eclectic digital archive and blog. It's dedicated to charting, well, a whole universe of interconnected ideas, esotericism, conspiracy theories, futurism. It's huge.
It really is an immense collection.
Yeah, profound stuff. So, let's get straight into some high-level feedback.
Okay. Well, the sheer depth of the research is, it's staggering, honestly. The author moves so effortlessly between subjects. I mean, analyzing dark matter one minute, then complex Jewish mysticism, then these deep dives into unsolved missing persons cases.
Right.
The ambition here is just palpable.
But almost immediately, we run into the first major hurdle, which is really about the packaging of all that ambition. Yeah, that's where we need to start, isn't it? Looking at structure and flow. The issue isn't really the content itself, I don't think. It's how the reader is introduced to it.
Precisely. Yeah. The maximalist kind of unfiltered presentation style, it actively creates this massive barrier to entry. It really undermines the sophisticated intellectual agenda.
How so, exactly?
Well, if a reader arrives ready to engage with, complex philosophical concepts, they really shouldn't have to fight tooth and nail just to figure out the navigation, or even just the headers.
Okay, so the weakness specifically is in that aesthetic choice. The chaotic formatting, the non-standard capitalization like Jern Keir or emoji dictionaries?
Yes, and the random link dumps, the really intense, almost overwhelming use of symbols and emojis in section titles.
That title, yeah. The one with the crying face emoji and the hieroglyphs and the cat? Thigh, double, tumma, I, tha'o, deck into, since it twin lutis in cat throne?
Right, it's a powerful statement, maybe, on the digital experience itself, but visually, it demands enormous cognitive effort.
The author's goal, it seems, is to explore complex, hidden systems. But the current presentation doesn't really critique the system. It feels more like the system is just broken down completely.
And that forces the reader to spend valuable energy just trying to parse the interface itself before they even get to the ideas.
Exactly. You're just decoding, not engaging.
Okay, but I can almost hear the author arguing that this chaos is the point, right? That the aesthetic is meant to reflect the noise of the Chronically Online experience.
Sure, that's a valid artistic choice. So how do we suggest they maybe filter that noise without losing that unique voice or the inherent energy of the project? It's distinctive.
Well, we don't suggest removing the chaos entirely. Not at all. It's about framing it. The suggestion for improvement is to introduce a, let's say, strategic editorial filter.
Okay.
A clear design hierarchy that allows the author to actually control the noise rather than just being consumed by it. We need to create some breathing room for the serious analysis to actually, breathe.
Right. It feels like an exercise in editorial discipline almost. So what are some concrete ways to draw that line between, atmosphere and actual readability?
Okay, so one idea could be to relegate the purely chaotic, the atmospheric elements. So the excessive emojis, the random link dumps, those really cryptic page titles like Li Shay I01, Lie Dragonpedia, 111 lol stars smoke bangs yanium.
The Dragonpedia one? Yeah.
Right. Put all of that into a single dedicated section. You could label it something explicit like data stream or flux, maybe even just the feed. That's where the noise lives. It had its place.
Ah, I see. So you give the noise a designated home. You validate its existence as part of the simulation, maybe, but you contain it.
Exactly. And then simultaneously, all the articulated feature-length pieces like the introductory primer or those critical essays like AI for an Eye, those must be presented in a clean, professional format. That stark contrast, The clear, analytical text right next to the designated chaos container, it instantly reinforces that this is an archive of ideas under conscious editorial control. not just some random digital feed hitting you in the face.
The contrast becomes the argument itself.
Precisely. It shows intent.
That shift in control, that intentionality, it's essential. And applying that kind of editorial judgment to the presentation, well, it immediately moves us into our second major critique, doesn't it? Which is about completeness and focus. Or maybe more accurately, the editorial hierarchy of the content itself.
Yeah, exactly. The author's curated decision, or maybe it's an implicit decision, to treat all inputs as sort of equivalent data points. It risks severely diluting the emotional and intellectual gravity of the material's most profound subjects.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, the overarching idea that everything is interconnected within this, digital substrate, that's brilliant. But just treating every single link as chronologically or editorially equivalent doesn't really prove the connection in a meaningful way.
It just proves the existence of an index, maybe.
Exactly. It's just a list. It doesn't demonstrate significance or relationship beyond simple coexistence in time.
Okay, let's look closely at a specific example, the section discussing the missing persons cases. The project features truly exceptional, deeply researched narrative pieces on cases like Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone Jr., Dee Rosenthal, Dulce Maria Alvarez.
Yeah, these are tragic, detailed human stories. Really well done.
And then you also have that thoughtful Gen X critique, Disco Babies. Great piece.
Right, so the weakness here is the placement. You're saying slatting these deeply researched, high-stakes human stories directly next to purely ephemeral, maybe casual links like, what was it, Dane Cook above it all?
Or Wendy Williams talking about Donald Trump. Things like that. Placing them side by side minimizes the significance of the serious pieces.
It sends this confusing, sometimes really jarring signal to the reader. It sort of suggests implicitly that a detailed disappearance report carries the same actual weight as a celebrity meme or a stand-up clip.
And that prevents the serious content from achieving the necessary resonance, the impact it deserves.
Absolutely. It gets lost in the noise.
Okay, but again, I can see the author's potential defense here. The material itself kind of suggests this chronological equivalence is intentional, doesn't it? To illustrate the sheer, overwhelming volume of the simulation and how meaning gets flattened online. Is that intent entirely misplaced then?
No, I don't think the intent is misplaced at all. I understand that intent completely, and it's a powerful statement about our current condition. However, the simulation argument actually becomes exponentially stronger if the writer consciously selects how these elements interact, rather than just listing them chronologically.
Ah, okay.
So the suggestion is to segment the content based on its inherent weight and purpose, like analysis versus ephemera. We need to establish a clear, conscious priority of relevance rather than just letting passive chronology dictate value.
So instead of just saying, look, here are 100 things that happened today, deal with it, you're suggesting something more like, okay, here are the 98 data points illustrating the overwhelming simulation, and here are the 2 critical human narratives we really needed to focus on within that simulation.
Exactly that, yes. You are actively showing the reader where the high-value data points are, where the meaningful friction, maybe, occurs in the system.
Okay, so concrete examples. How would that look?
Well, the author could create distinct feature sections, maybe visually distinct too, reserved only for content requiring detailed critical reading.
Like the missing persons cases?
Definitely. The missing persons cases, the summary on dark matter, that Disco Babies essay, these need to be visually and editorially prioritized. Put them up front, give them space.
And what about all the casual links? The Dane Cook, the Wendy Williams. Do they just go?
No, they stay, but they need to be framed. Below the feature section maybe, you could have a brief editorial note. Explain explicitly that these casual links are purely illustrative of the simulation theory theme, but consciously state that they must not overshadow the complex human narratives or the deep research pieces.
I see. So you're demonstrating active editorial judgment? A human curating the algorithm, essentially, rather than just reflecting its passivity?
Exactly. It elevates the entire project's intellectual stakes because it shows conscious thought behind the curation.
That idea of intentional curation, it leads us perfectly into our final major critique, doesn't it? Focusing on angle and originality. And this really centers around the amazing conceptual framework the author has already built.
Yes, it's already there. See, the material contains these two competing yet really compelling voices. There's the chaotic aggregator who just compiles all the data, the endless stream.
Uh-huh.
And then there's this incredibly sharp, focused critic who interprets it. And elevating that critical voice, making it the primary one, that would unify the entire project into a truly powerful original argument.
And the brilliance here, it's currently hiding behind some of that noise we talked about earlier. I'm talking about the AI for an I manifesto.
Exactly.
The core concepts in there are so potent, exploring the friction points of the digital age through these ideas like the analog resistance, the glitch, the silent war, the shadow. It's fantastic stuff.
That is the project's spine. It really is. The weakness is simply that this core conceptual framework, this manifesto, it's currently presented almost like secondary content. It's kind of buried deep within the larger, unfocused blog structure.
Which is crazy because it's arguably the strongest, most original element of the entire submission. That central idea that we trade our synthetic faculty, our digital reach, for a human one, for depth.
Yes, it is dramatically undervalued where it currently sits. It feels like just another post among many.
So that needs to be front and center, absolutely. How do we make sure that thesis isn't just another link in the chain, but becomes the chain itself, the organizing principle?
Well, the suggestion is pretty straightforward, I think. Elevate the AI for an I thesis to become the explicit, overarching editorial framework for the entire blog.
Okay.
The author needs to use its potent critical vocabulary. The glitch, the shadow, analog resistance, use those terms to actually categorize and structure all the other disparate content.
Right, instead of generic tags.
Exactly. This immediately transforms the chaos from just a random collection into a live, categorized illustration of a really insightful philosophy.
Oh, I love that idea. Using the manifesto's themes as the primary organizational tags, instead of those generic labels like what TF or label whore that are there now.
Yeah.
It instantly gives the reader the intellectual map they need to navigate this complex territory.
It makes everything purposeful. Think about it. You could categorize the Gen X Disco Babies essay under, say, the analog resistance. Why? Because it highlights that struggle to maintain touch and tangibility in an increasingly digital world.
Okay, yeah, that works perfectly.
Or the Hoc-to-us simulation theory video, which is essentially about algorithms resurfacing old, fragmented content without context, right? That fits perfectly under the glitch. It illustrates when the system breaks, or just misfires spectacularly.
And what about content about, say, data labelers or the invisible gig workers that fuel the whole AI economy? The stuff about unseen labor.
That should be explicitly tagged under the shadow. That's exactly what the shadow theme seems to be about in the manifesto. By doing this, the author is essentially providing the key for the audience to unlock the archive. Every single link, every post, regardless of its original context, is suddenly recontextualized. It becomes a direct, powerful illustration of the manifesto's philosophy.
So the blog stops being just an archive of interesting, sometimes disturbing links.
And it starts being a living proof of concept for the manifesto itself. The connections become explicit and meaningful.
That elevation, that structural change, it instantly provides the necessary clarity and intellectual rigor that the current purely aesthetic chaos kind of obscures. This feels like a brilliant strategy for unifying the whole work.
I think it strengthens the project profoundly. Look, the current work already shows the author is deeply invested and highly intelligent. That's obvious.
Yeah, absolutely.
These steps just help the audience see that intelligence immediately, and it provides them with the tools to engage with the material at the level it really deserves.
Okay, great. So to summarize our main actionable steps for strengthening the Chronically online algorithm. First, we need to address structure and flow. That means editing the maximalist, chaotic aesthetic.
Right. Relegate the purely atmospheric elements, the noise, to a designated, framed data stream section, or something similar. Contain it, frame it. Second, establish a clearer editorial hierarchy to improve focus. This means consciously segmenting the profound narrative content, like those detailed missing persons cases, separating them from the purely ephemeral data points. Show that conscious judgment over algorithmic passivity, Make the hierarchy clear.
And third, leverage that fantastic AI 4 and I manifesto. Elevate it. Make it the core thesis.
Yes, and use its philosophical concepts, the glitch, the shadow, the analog resistance. Use those as the unifying organizational framework for everything else on the site.
It provides the project with the sharp focus and originality it absolutely deserves.
Exactly. Focus on clarity, focus on impact, but without sacrificing that unique ambition. The project is genuinely spectacular. Now it just needs that structure to let the brilliance shine through clearly.
We are incredibly excited to see the revised version, really. Once you've had a chance to implement these structural and aesthetic changes, we definitely invite you to submit your revised material back in again for another critique.
Yeah, we'd love to see it. We look forward to seeing the result of this conscious edit. It has huge potential.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep refining that critical lens.